A very clear example of what this new Supreme Court is going to, the sort of ruling that it's going to make, was made evident late last night in a 5-4 ruling. The Supreme Court sided with religious organizations in a dispute over the COVID-19 restrictions that were put in place by the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo. Those restrictions limited the number of people attending religious services. Oh, no. Oh, no, you don't. The case, and I'll get to it in a second, is the latest that puts these insane religious groups against city and state officials who are trying to stop the spread of COVID-19. You know, Andrew Cuomo is a Catholic. And one of the organizations that brought the lawsuit or brought the case before the Supreme Court is the Catholic Diocese of New York, and a bunch of Orthodox Jews. And I'm sure that there are evangelical Protestants hiding behind the woodwork, cheering all this bullshit on. But the ruling last night puts unavoidable emphasis on the impact of Justice Amy Catholic Barrett and what this Supreme Court is going to be like with her there. And of course, their decision by the Supreme Court comes as coronavirus cases, hospital admissions, tests, and death continues to surge across the country. But these religious nutcases, Catholic, Protestant, and Jew, here they go. The Catholic Diocese and Orthodox Jewish synagogues were the ones involved in this case. And in the late night decision, Justice Amy Catholic Barrett sided with her conservative colleagues. You know who they are. And Chief Justice John Roberts joined the 3 liberal justices in dissent. Oh, my goodness. Look what John Roberts, the role he's being forced into. Now, a little bit of very recent history, last spring and summer, before Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. The court split 5-4 on similar cases out of California and Nevada. But in those cases, Justice Roberts sided with the 4 liberals in the majority against houses of worship. And Amy Catholic Barrett was confirmed in October to take Ginsburg's seat. The ruling last night was released just before midnight. And it contains, according to the New York Times, it contains several separate opinions and some unusually critical language. And I want to share some of this with you because this is the madness that I talk about frequently. And to the extent that it pisses off my deeply religious listeners, I used to say, well, I'm sorry for that, but I don't anymore, because if you are still deeply religious, then when you listen to this program, my suggestion is you just set that out in the hallway before you come in to listen to what I talk about. Because I have no respect, none whatsoever, for any kind of religious hog shit. I just don't. It's anti-life, it's anti-science, it's anti-everything, except it's narrow cult-like belief systems that will take you nowhere. But anyway, where was I? In the main, according to New York Times, in the main unsigned opinion, the majority ruled in favor, of course, of the Roman Catholic Diocese in Brooklyn and Agudath Israel of America, that's the synagogue, that argued that the restrictions put in place by Governor Cuomo to try to get the pandemic under control violated the free exercise clause of the First Amendment because the regulations that Cuomo put in place treated the houses of worship more harshly than comparable secular facilities. That's what the lawsuit said, or the appeal before the Supreme Court, and that's how these five fascist judges, religious fascist judges, ruled. That somehow religion was being discriminated against. And this, I hope you can see the point I'm trying to make, and well, not trying, the point I am making, the point I've been making over the years about religious bullshit. Now, the majority on the Supreme Court late last night, right before midnight, the majority said that the regulations put in place are, quote, far more restrictive than any COVID-regulated regulations that have previously come before the court, much tighter than those adopted by many other jurisdictions hard hit by the pandemic, and far more severe than has been shown to be required to prevent the spread of the virus, end quote, at the religious services in question. Now, when I read that little segment from last night's Supreme Court ruling, it sounded like a political position paper. It didn't sound like a ruling of a Supreme Court based on constitutional standards and restrictions and allowances and so on and so forth. It sounded like political bullshit, didn't it to you? What Cuomo did in issuing this order, in order to put the kibosh as much as possible on COVID-19 in New York, was to place restrictions on attendance. And those restrictions on attendance are divided up by geographic zones in New York, classified as red or orange, depending on the degree to which the people there are dealing with COVID-19, the infection rate, the hospitalization rate, the death rate. But the Roman Catholic Diocese of Brooklyn issued a statement this morning applauding the court's decision, of course. And the Catholic Diocese said that it is gratified and appreciated the court's recognition of, quote, a clear First Amendment violation, an urgent need for relief in this case, end quote. I'm trying to control what is starting to feel like real rage. But anyway, let me quote the Reverend Nicholas DiMarzio, who's the Bishop of Brooklyn. Mr. DiMarzio said in a statement, quote, I have said from the beginning, the restrictions imposed by Governor Cuomo were an overreach that did not take into account the size of our churches or the safety protocols that have kept parishioners safe, end quote. Now, I don't know about Reverend DiMarzio's COVID infection rate among his parishioners, but to state that the efforts made by these huge monster churches, I don't care if they're Catholic or Protestant, that somehow the safety protocols put in place have kept parishioners safe is utter bullshit. I mean, it's just absolutely not true. How many times have we read about these church assemblages that have resulted in super spreader events of people getting sick and dying? And you know, I'm half inclined to celebrate this Supreme Court decision in a very cynical way, in that it means more people who insist on this insane gathering, which makes no sense. If you want to worship your concept of a God, nobody is stopping you. If you want to pray in school, nobody is stopping you. If you want to worship anything you want to worship, nobody is stopping you. But when your religious belief begins to conflict with public health, which takes the higher priority? Which one? Public health or religious horseshit? Oh, well, if you're going to put it that way, Malloy, you know what I mean. It's just... oh, God. The safety protocols that have kept parishioners safe. Now, for its part, Agadah Israel of America also celebrated the Supreme Court's ruling in their favor. The Rabbi Chaim Dovid Zweibel, who is the executive vice president of Agadah Israel, said in a statement, quote, "This is an historic victory." He went on to say, "This landmark decision will ensure that religious practices and religious institutions will be protected from government edicts that do not treat religion with the respect demanded by the Constitution," end quote. So this rabbi is as full of shit as the Reverend Bishop of Brooklyn, the Catholic. I mean, what am I missing here? If you're a Jew or a Catholic, if you're a conservative, well, you're not. You wouldn't be listening to this program. If you're a Reformed Jew or a fallen Catholic, or no, a cafeteria Catholic, right? What is it that I'm missing from these religious leaders who say that this is a victory for the practice of religion? There's something about religion that just destroys the logical or the reasoning functions of a person's prefrontal lobes. You see it, if you open your eyes, you see it all the time. I mean, we tell our kids, right? "Oh, now, honey, fairies really don't exist. There are no elves and wee folk in the forest," even though we did tell you stories about that when you were little. It doesn't exist. There are no trolls except on the internet. There are no creatures and dragons and this and that. But these same people will convince their children that there are creatures that fly through the air, half human and with huge wings. And when you go to sleep at night, some of these creatures hover over your bed. Oh, my goodness. And that there's a place off somewhere where when you die, you don't really die. You rematerialize, only it's all different because your rotten, decaying body is all of a sudden made new. When you were 4 years old, or a newborn infant, or 26, or 30, or 50, whenever you felt like you looked your best. I mean, this is madness. This is why so many people in the United States suffer from mental illness, in my humble opinion, the schizophrenic bullshit. Don't believe in fairies, kids, but do believe in angels. Well, what's the difference, Daddy? They both have wings. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com. And never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.